Joining us now is foreign policy expert and geopolitical analyst Harley Lippman. Harley, we appreciate you being here. As I was mentioning to Daniel, I have seen Turkey deteriorate economically over the last 7 years, particularly when I was there. The lira, when I was there, was 7 to the dollar. It's now 19.5 to the dollar, and you have inflation at 50%. That's crushing. So you have Erdogan right now at the last moment here trying to pledge that he's going to raise federal workers' salaries by 45%. Is that campaign promise at the 11th hour here going to be enough to get him across the finish line, with polls showing his opponent, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, with a slight edge?
Well, he's certainly doing everything he can to get an advantage in the election. He actually increased the minimum wage 3 times in the last year and a half, which a lot of people feel is obviously political. He's looking to do that to get more votes. And yes, he's promising to lower inflation in the next few years. He's given all these lofty promises, but he's not doing anything about interest rates. And that's probably due to an Islamic view that you don't lower interest rates. So he's reacting to the economy in somewhat of an Islamic fashion, which is hurting the country terribly. As was reported, there's terrible inflation, there's unemployment, and there's terrible misery given what's happened in the earthquake.
Yeah, great points that you just made there. I also want to talk a little bit about Turkey as a NATO ally. It's safe to say that the United States has had a difficult relationship with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. They've been at odds over the issue of the S-400 missile defense system. Turkey, of course, blames the United States for not assisting with the extradition of the man who it believes is the mastermind behind the 2016 coup attempt. Is there a belief that there will be a difference at all in the relationship, the tense relationship, the tough relationship that we have seen between Turkey and the United States, if there is an opposition candidate that's ushered in?
Well, yes, the opposition candidate is positioning himself as gearing Turkey towards a pro-Western perspective, the way Turkey was before Erdogan won the election 20 years ago and has been in power ever since. So this is an extremely consequential election. This is going to have a tremendous impact in the region around the world, because Turkey is, as you point out, a NATO ally, is actually the second largest NATO military ally after the United States. So it's quite important to NATO. But Turkey plays both sides right now. And that's a problem for NATO. And they're also standing in the ways right now of Finland and Sweden, who want to be members, because in NATO, you need the unanimous support of every NATO member. And the only one that's holding out is Turkey. And it's a year later, and they're still putting obstacles in the way. So it's going to be very challenging with Erdogan. And clearly, the West would like to see a change. And it's a clear election of which way it's going to go. Either it's going to go Erdogan's way, in which the country may have their last free election tomorrow, and will have an authoritarian rule, something like Central Asian countries have now, or they're going to go back more or less to the Western sphere, which is the United States and its allies. So clearly, in America's best interest is to have an election victory of Erdogan's opponent, KK, as he's known in Turkey.
I'm remembering the fallout of the aftermath of the 2016 coup attempt. It was an opportunity where Erdogan used that to hold a Turkish referendum that would give him unprecedented power, moving the system from a parliamentary system to a presidential one. There are a lot of people that would like to see that reversed under the opposition, so the president doesn't hold that much power and that there's a return to the voters. We've heard Kılıçdaroğlu talking a lot about that. Talk to me a little bit again about the power struggle and whether that's a dynamic that would change in the country under the opposition, and whether there is enough confidence in the fact that these elections will be free and fair.
That's a great point. It's a great issue here. So there are some analysts who feel that the elections are complicated. They're free, but they're not fair. They're not fair because the government wields a tremendous amount of power and uses that power. For example, their national television gives a fraction of the time to the opposition and over 90% of the airtime to the incumbent, to President Erdogan. And there are many other ways that the government is using its power to gain an advantage in this election. But it still may be free, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens if the election is contested, if it's very close. And as we've seen in America, elections are increasingly extremely close, 50-50. And it's something like that in Turkey. As we heard earlier by your correspondent, it's something like 49% to 46, 47%, very close. And to win the election, you need to win over 50%. If you don't win over 50%, there'll be a runoff of the two main candidates, in which most analysts think that KK, the opponent of Erdogan, should win.
Yeah, and Harley, it does look by all estimations that this could be close enough to go to a runoff, but you also take into account that a lot of my friends who are journalists who have been covering the elections in the country say that a lot of people are afraid to express their support publicly for the opposition. So it's unclear if we are dealing with a silent majority there. Harley Lippman, appreciate your perspective. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.